Hello, everyone. Patricia Calkins here. Welcome to the fourth week of Decoding Cultures. We've been working pretty hard with some pretty difficult topics. I know that it's not really that easy to understand the difference between a high context culture and a low context culture, and that the idea of face, um, especially because we have this sort of idea of face in Western cultures that is not at all like the idea of face in Eastern cultures, that concept is also kind of hard to understand. Just a couple more comments about those topics from last week. Um, I would like to remind you that whether you act in a high context or a low context manner has nothing to do with your free will. You don't choose to act in a high context or a low context manner. Your acculturation to your culture has provided for you what is the acceptable and normal way for you to act. Um, if you are in a situation that demands that you change how you act, whether you started off in a low context culture and now you need to use high context strategies, or the other way around, um, you have to know that it is an exception. You change because the way that your culture says that you should do it does not work. Okay, so you are following the rules of your culture, both when you use whatever is your normal context for communication and when you find that it is okay to use the other context for your communication. This is not done consciously. Um, this is something that we have learned to do over time with the number of situations with which we are faced. So, high context and low context, that's not something you can turn on and off. That's something that happens on its own. I want to give you another example of a high context situation. So, imagine that you are a young woman in Vietnam and you have been going out with a young man for quite a long time now, and you would like to marry this young man. So you decide to bring the young man home to meet your parents. And it's going to be had over a meal. So you bring the young man in, and you, the young man, and your parents sit there and have the normal kind of conversation that one would have over a meal when they're meeting the potential in laws for the first time. But of course, the young woman is getting more nervous as things go on because she knows that at the end of the meal, her mother is going to give the family's yay or nay to the young man. So it turns out that at time for dessert, the mother goes in the kitchen and she brings back a platter that has the dessert on it. The young woman takes one look at it and bursts into tears because she knows, and the young man knows too, that the mother has just said the young man is unacceptable for the daughter. And that is the end of it. Now, how did she know that her mother had just said that her intended was not the right person? Think about how you might do this in the United States. If there's a time when the parents think that the daughter, or son for that matter, is going out with somebody who is just not right for them, they're going to talk about it. The mother may pull a daughter aside and say, "Honey, you know that I love you, but he's just not right for you. And here are the ways he is not right for you: A, B, C, and D. I'm really sorry, honey, but we just can't approve of this." So there does get to be some communication about the reason for not allowing this to go forward. In the Vietnamese situation that I was describing, the mother's and father's approval, or disapproval actually, was shown by the nature of the dessert that she brought. The dessert consisted of two dishes that obviously did not go along together. These were two dishes that nobody would eat together. So that is the signal that the young man and the young woman are not right for each other. There will not be that conversation that I just modeled from the low context culture between the daughter and the mother. In the high context culture, what has to be said was already said. And generally speaking, in a high context culture, the individual needs of a person are generally going to be less important than the group. And that is the case in Vietnamese culture. So that conversation is never going to happen. I hope that example gives you some kind of idea of, in an everyday way, how these context can influence culture. So I'd like to take a look at what we're going to be doing for this week. I'm going to share my screen with you. Once again, this is still going to be grayed out because I haven't yet made this go live. But you can see that we're starting the week. There's an introductory video. I sort of look the same in that video, but this is an old one. I'll replace it with this one. There's an application exercise that you need to do that works with this idea of high context and low context. There is a video you'll need to watch about an interaction in Perry, Iowa, and you're going to discuss that within the framework of intercultural communication ethics, which is in your book. Followed by that, we're going to learn about another framework that you can look at communication by, and that's called intercultural communicative competence. Your book talks about a different framework called intercultural communication competence. That is not what we are going to be using in this class. We're going to be using intercultural communicative competence, which emphasizes the role of language in communication. There will be a forum that you'll need to respond to. And then at the end of the week, rather than having you do a blog post, you're going to write a 1.5-page paper that you're going to upload. So this will take the place of your blog post. I want to remind you that this is a formal paper. Although it doesn't need to have a formal title, and you don't need anything like a cover page or anything like that. You do need to have all of your sources cited in either proper APA or MLA format. And there is here a Sapir-Whorf paper upload. There's also a little bit down here about languages and nationalism with a short quiz you need to take. And then particularly important is preparing for next week. So there's an article here called, Does the US Need a Language Policy? You need to have that read by the time next week starts, because there's going to be your first longer paper due, and that's going to be due on Sunday, November 22nd. And if you look at it down here, there is the paper description and rubric. I will be adding a video to highlight what you need to pay attention to about that paper topic. You don't want to go ahead and write this paper already and have it all ready to hand in before we have our discussion from next week.